I think one piece of advice that I would give in probably all roles is to be really grounded in what you believe. Know why you're in the business of education. Be open to thinking differently, of course. But if you feel that something's happening that isn't in alignment with your belief, then you have to challenge. I think it's really important, especially as you move into administration. I'm okay to be an outlier.
Oh, wow. Okay, I love that.
And I think that when we're anchored on our belief, then, and you know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't want to wait for somebody else.
Yeah.
It's the right thing for kids. I'm quite happy that if we're anchored in what we believe that education should be for young people, then we do what's right for students.
All right. Well, Alison, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm really excited to host you.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
It's a beautiful Friday. So
it is.
I love doing podcasts on a Friday. I tend to have, it's a nice day. The weekend's close by. It's a long weekend too. So it's a nice day to do a podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I've got to do a bit of research about your journey from principal, superintendent, the different boards you've been at as well. But I'm sure there are guests and listeners out there that haven't had the pleasure of meeting you. So if you may, Alison, give us a quick rundown. What's your career been like? How did you get into the world of education and your role today as well?
Well, I've been really blessed to experience many different opportunities in education. So I would say right from the Faculty of Education, I was part of the concurrent program.
Okay.
And in that program, it was 3 years at the time. And so I had an array of different practicum experiences. After my time at York University, I became a teacher at the Toronto District School Board. And after about 11 years into my career there, I taught at the York's Faculty of Education for 4 years. So that was a full circle moment for me, going back to the faculty where I learned and received my my education degree. And then I went back to the board. I was a vice principal. I was a principal. And then I spent a number of years in a role of a centrally assigned principal, which some boards have, some boards don't. And it's a really neat role because you have the opportunity to work system-wide. And after that experience, I became a superintendent in one of the areas where I taught, which is Rexdale. So that's another full circle moment for me. And and then I landed here as associate director with Waterloo Region District School Board.
Beautiful. Did you always have the intent of, because I find that whenever people pursue teaching and being a teacher, they never think about, I want to be a superintendent or a director or, they always think about the teaching and the kids, and that's why we get into it in the first place. What was it for you? What was the intention? Yes, I want to teach, and then I want to go to the board level and do this cool stuff. Or did you always find that you went in with the intent of just being a teacher for your life?
I absolutely went in with the intent of being a teacher for my life. I didn't know what a superintendent was when I started.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a role that I ever aspired to get into. So it's interesting that you say that. Sometimes it's the tap on the shoulder. And I think more often it's I wonder if I can do something different and reach children in a different way.
Right.
If I was in this role. And I think that's what inspired me to work at York's Faculty of Education. That's what inspired me to think about being a vice principal, a principal, superintendent, and associate director. All of those roles were nothing I ever thought about.
Yeah. Now, I have never personally actually had the pleasure of sitting down with an associate director. So I've done superintendents, I've done directors of education. What does an associate director do? And I'm asking out of naivety.
It's a great question because when I was approached about applying for the job, I said, so what exactly do we do in this role? And the construction of Toronto is different than the construction of Waterloo Region.
Right.
And for me, there are 2 associate directors, and I touch everything academic.
Okay.
Anything to do with the academics, whether it's special education or whether it's mental health well-being or math, literacy, how we're staffing the schools, the budget in the schools, all of those pieces I touch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of different moving pieces as well.
There is.
And because you've been at different roles, you've been, teacher, principal, vice principal, like you've gone through a lot of these roles. For each of those roles, could you give me one piece of advice for someone that's in that role currently? So one piece of advice for when you're a teacher, when you're vice principal, when you're principal, and so on.
I think one piece of advice that I would give in probably all roles is to be really grounded in what you believe. Know why you're in the business of education.
Okay.
Be open to thinking differently, of course. But if you if you feel that something's happening that isn't in alignment with your belief, then you have to challenge.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, especially as you move into administration, to continue to be firm in your beliefs, but have friends.
Yeah.
You need to phone a friend to say, this is how I'm feeling. And sometimes you think you're alone as a vice principal or a principal, or you feel like I'm supposed to know things.
Yeah.
Same with as a superintendent, when you move into that role, again, grounded in your belief, but also understand the world around you and the politics. I think it wasn't until I hit superintendency that I understood how political the world of education really is and how much it impacts and intersects with what happens in the classroom. So I think anyone going into a superintendent role, you really need to know what you believe, but also have that real political acuity about the world around you.
Is it annoying for it to be? I'm just, I feel like for someone that loves education, I'll just get so annoyed.
It is so annoying.
Yeah, because you're like, I want to do something good and it works and, it makes sense. And then there's like a million political things that come in the way of making you do something for the kids, which is what the intent is for.
Absolutely. I think it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Because when you get to a certain space and you think, I'm just going to move into this to do this for the kids. You're like, wait a minute. And you said, this policy isn't really good for kids.
Yeah.
You're into a completely different arena. So it's difficult, but I also think something I've learned along the way is everything in education to some degree is political.
Yeah.
And it was the awareness I think I didn't have when I was in a teacher or a vice principal or a principal role.
For someone that struggles with that, like struggles with being politically acute, as you have put it, and they just like, they just, it's not in them to even do that. What would you suggest they do? Like, how would you suggest you become politically acute? Like, I'm just curious for my own sake as well.
Well, I would probably be someone that I would say I'm not politically acute. Like I just don't want to get into it, and all my friends would say that's not true. But I think a lot of it is listening to those around you, but I also think it's listening to the families.
Okay.
Because so much of their hardship with education or their love for education is intertwined with politics. Sometimes we tend to listen to voices that think the same way we do, and we can create a bit of an echo chamber. And I think it's so important to listen to those diverse voices, the people maybe you don't necessarily hang out with. And of course, to listen to the news, not too much because it can be quite depressing at times, but to understand like what are the push factors that really impact public education.
I feel like even with the news, and because it's public education and it's taxpayer money, it just anything even slightly on the negative side that happens is always blown up a lot more than the positive is shown, right? So it's sort of managing that piece as well. No, that's really. Did you always know that you wanted to go and educate? Like, was this like a childhood dream of yours? Would you play teacher with your parents? Like, what was it growing up? Did you always want to be a teacher?
When we emigrated to Canada from England, it was always just known in my house that you needed to pursue post-secondary education. There was no, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. So I think the importance and the significance of education was really, if you will, it was sort of the kindling for me.
Yeah.
And the spark for me was growing up. I always knew that, there were spaces where I didn't belong. I couldn't name it or understand it or articulate it the way that I might today. But I would know I don't really belong in that space. When I moved from grade 8 to grade 9, I knew I was being streamed, but I didn't have that language. And so seeing the inequity of the world, I think all children see it, including myself. But I really think it was my practicum experience when I was at the Faculty of Education. I was really blessed to go through a program called the Urban Diversity Program at the time. They had courses, and it was under Dr. Patrick Solomon at York University. And I was in my third year of concurrent education, which means I've had 2 years of practice teaching. So by now I'm thinking I'm pretty good. Like I've got it covered. I know what I'm doing. And then I was placed in Jane and Finch. And, I figured, okay, I'm in my third year. I've been doing this for 2 years. And I realized I had no idea what I was doing. And it was the kids that really, I believe, taught me how to teach. They taught me if I didn't have relationships, I really couldn't teach. They taught me if I didn't understand them, what we might frame as culturally responsive education today, that I couldn't reach them. So I think I think I fell into some of my passions in education, but
Right.
growing up from my family, education mattered, and I knew and believed that maybe education could be the equalizer.
Hmm. And how do you, like, when you say build relationships as well with the students too?
Mhm.
I find that is such a consistent piece of advice that a lot of educators is like, get to know your kids, get to know the students that you serve. How would you do that? How do you go about doing that? Is that like, am I imagining Alison sitting down one-on-one with every kid, throughout the semester? Am I imagining, what am I imagining when you're trying to build that
Right.
relationship with kids?
I think you're imagining one, yes, sit one-on-one with all of your students, but I really think to listen. Kids tell you
Mm.
what they're about when you listen. I remember when I started teaching in Rexdale, the kids were into hip hop. I didn't listen to hip hop. I'm like, I got to start listening to this hip hop. And
Yeah.
I started this thing called, okay, I might be aging myself. There was something called Freestyle Fridays on,
Okay.
do you remember this on BET?
I have no idea,
Well, I
but it
started
sounds
this,
fun.
see,
Yeah.
it was fun. It was all about rapping. So I started this
Yeah.
thing called We Style Wednesday.
Oh,
And
wow.
the
Okay.
kids would come and they would rap, and because that's
Really?
what they were into. And so I
Oh my
was like,
God.
okay, if you're about rapping, then I'm pulling that into what I do.
I love
And if it's
that.
important to you, it's important to me. I used to have after school, drop in, have tea, do your homework, bring your siblings if you have to pick them up, because a lot
Oh,
of the
wow.
kids were, and we just were in community together.
Yeah.
And I think they knew I respected them, which I did. And I was really open and willing and wanting to meet their families. Like, tell me about your life.
Mm.
And I think when kids know you care about them, it changes the conversation.
You made it less like a traditional classroom and more like a community, more like a
Yes,
family.
Absolutely. So some of those strategies that teachers use, like they have a circle where they talk, they gather every morning in community. I didn't think my students were empty vessels and I had to fill them. It was, you came to the table with something. Your parent was your first teacher. Talk to me about what you've already learned. And I used to always say at the beginning of a school year, okay, everyone has 100%. And they would all look at me, what? I've never had 100% in my whole life.
Yeah.
And I'd say, like, unless you do something different,
You work downwards. Yeah.
you're going to still have 100. And I think there was this, they knew I believed in them.
Yeah.
And I did. And I think that resonates with anybody.
Do you miss being a teacher?
Yes. Yeah. You always miss that connection, that, daily connection with students.
Yeah.
But I think you always find ways, regardless of your role, to get in there. I love, as an associate director, I go to the schools with the superintendents.
Yeah.
We do walkthroughs together. I can see the students, because that feeds you. That's
Yeah,
our employer.
that's
That's
the
our
energy.
employer, if you will.
Your users.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. That's so refreshing. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the work going on at Waterloo.
Sure.
So in your role as an associate director, when you think about the upcoming year, the strategic plan, what are some of the biggest priorities or biggest challenges that you see coming up?
I think there's a number of priorities. 2 priorities, 3 actually, that I walked into that were already in motion. We're continuing the work. Literacy, of course, numeracy. Something we're very focused on right now in both literacy and numeracy is tiered instruction, which means we have to instruct in a very particular way, which would include, in education, what we would call small group instruction. And we know that probably 80% of the students can achieve if we're teaching that way. What we have to get better at, and what is a real focus in Waterloo, is how do we know for the students who are struggling, and how do we give them targeted support, which is something that we would call tiered 2 instruction. So we have a structured literacy plan,
Right.
as well as a math achievement and action plan that are already in motion.
Yeah.
We're also excited about the destreaming work in the board. We continue to think about how structures in education really disenfranchise young people. So in grade 9, we're single streamed like the rest of the province. And in grade 10, all students take the academic program of study. So we're also de-streamed in grade 10, which isn't the same in all boards in the province. We have some great data and success rates around students who now have more access to post-secondary options because of that work. So we want to get really intentional, because there are things that are difficult about de-streaming. Students do come to high school with gaps.
Do you know how many boards are doing the de-streaming? I'm just curious.
Well, all boards are doing grade 9 because that was a
okay.
ministry mandate.
Uh,
They sort of said when we got direction in 2020 around de-streaming that grade 9 and 10, but most boards didn't do grade 10.
Did it 9,
or they
yeah.
started grade 10 and they've pulled back
Mm,
because it's hard work.
yeah.
And it's a challenge to what we've done for many years in this province. So we made a very conscious decision to push forward with all students having access to the most rigorous curriculum in grade 10, which is academic.
Wow. And do you always find that, because talking about the other boards, I think some of the directors I've spoken to have also said there's this thing that when you're operating as a board and you want to innovate, you also have to kind of look at what the other boards are doing to make sure they're also doing the same thing. And you don't want to be like an outlier in either direction. Like you don't want to be too far ahead in innovation where you're the only one doing something, but also not behind. So does that, just from your experience, does that factor in when you think about innovation and sort of like when you want to introduce something to a school board? Is it always like, are our neighbors doing it? And if they are, then maybe we should as well.
For me, absolutely not. I'm okay to be an outlier.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love that.
And I think that when we're anchored on our belief, then, and you know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't want to wait for somebody else. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's the right thing for kids. Now, I was with Toronto for 28 years.
Yeah.
And because Toronto is the largest board, we often
I'm
did
sure,
start
yeah.
things first. But I'm quite happy that if we're anchored in what we believe that education should be for young people, then we do what's right for students.
I really like that. Yeah, I've heard that a lot actually, which is very interesting that you say. But I love that about your response because I think a lot of people have this maybe it's a misconception, but this conception that our public school doesn't innovate as much because we are sort of like bound by these politics or, you know, what are the others doing and can we go as far as to do that? So I really like that you've shared that. So one of the things that you shared in your role as an associate director, one of the focuses that you shared early on, well-being was one of them, right? Student achievement is the other. Academics was the other one that you shared. One of the things I do want to double click on, you mentioned literacy, numeracy, different types of programs. I think what we have started to see a lot from people and sort of, it might be noise, but outside noise, is the sense that our kids today aren't as they used to be years ago from a literacy, from a numeracy perspective. How much of that is true when you look at data, when you look at your experience with the kids? Because I hear a lot of people say that, you know, in Canada, you know, we aren't developing talent for our larger term future. And it all starts with the schools, right? That's when they're growing up. So what's your perspective when you look at this from a bigger picture, literacy, numeracy within Canada? Do you think we're actually behind other countries? Do you think we're doing well? What's your perspective on that?
I mean, my perspective is, well, first, there seems to be a misnomer that education stopped thinking and focusing on literacy and numeracy, which is absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
No one ever forgot about the foundational skills. That's our bread and butter, if you will. I think there have been different ways in which we think about education. And I haven't looked at all the international data, but I would struggle to believe we're far behind other countries. I know when, it must be a number of years ago now, when Sweden asked a contingent from York University, and I was working at the faculty at that time, to come and share what we did because we were so far ahead on on what's called PISA, which is an international measure of academics, and Canada does quite well. I think the other thing that we have to really be cognizant of in public education is many students will do well in spite of what we do. So, you know, my husband and I are both educators. Our kids are very privileged economically. They're privileged that if something goes wrong at school, we know how to navigate the system. And I'm never quite worried about what happens in their classroom in terms of their instruction because I know I can fill the blank. And those who are affluent or who have an understanding of the system, they can do that. And they've always been able to do that. So I think when we think about instruction, that Canada uses the practices that we know are best for young people. I really would struggle to believe that we're far behind other countries. And in terms of being innovative, it's always been an area, at least in Toronto and in Waterloo now, where I've worked, it's always been a focus.
Yeah. How does technology change that? I mean, we're seeing a lot of new implementation with AI or, with new technologies that are changing the way that we teach, the way that students learn, the way that they acquire knowledge, the way that they present knowledge. Do you think that that's like, is that one, my first question, I guess, is that sort of being accounted for in these initiatives and programs? Is then integration of this type of technology, or are we seeing those in isolation? Literacy and numeracy are more foundational, not much of a relationship with the technology, and the technology is a separate piece to it.
All boards are now creating their own mandate around AI because it is something we need to really think about. It's funny when my son is going into grade 12.
Nice.
And when he started using AI and ChatGPT, I was like, you're cheating.
Yeah.
And he was like, Mom, it's a tool.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting conversation for me because he really was using it as a tool. So I do think that we really have to think about how can AI support us in the innovation of education? How do we use it as a tool to support this current generation? They all use AI.
Yeah.
So we can't pretend it isn't there.
Right.
We have to think about how can it complement what we're doing in ways to really support young people. We have to think about the difference between AI and iterative AI. Like, how do we teach young people to use it effectively for their best interest?
Yeah. I was talking to a teacher and he said when the calculator first came out, it was also cheating.
100%.
So it's the same thing.
And I remember that.
Yeah. And we're like, oh, you're cheating. You can't do that. And now look at us, right? I think when I speak to you, Alison, I also sense that compared to a lot of other people, you are a little bit of a trailblazer, which I love. So if you're willing to put your voice to what you believe in and push the boundaries a little bit in a positive way when it comes to doing something good for our future as well. Destreaming has been a big part of that, I assume, in terms of maybe your focus or something that you're involved in. How do you see the future of that? Like, let's say you're doing grade 9 and 10 now at Waterloo Region. What happens after? Like, is this something that you want to do grade 6, 7, 8, 11, 12? Like, what's the future of the destreaming initiative specifically?
And I think when I started in the work of destreaming, it was that moment when I realized that when everyone finished grade 12, they didn't all have access to the same opportunities. And at the heart of destreaming, that's what it's about. Will student A and student B all have all the same pathways open to them? And what we know to be true is if students aren't taking a certain number of U-level, so university level, grade 12 courses, the chances of them going to college, university, they just don't exist.
Yeah.
So what I would love to see in a world where the streams are gone is that every child has the same access to opportunity. We also know that some children, depending on their racial identity or if they have special education needs, they don't have access to the same pathways as another child over here. And if we're trying to create education as the great equalizer, then we have to take a targeted look at the streams and the impact. The data is overwhelming. We know it doesn't work for young people. So now we have to think about how can we create a system in terms of what does work.
Yeah. Sorry, why doesn't it work for the younger kids?
So it doesn't work because what we used to believe is if, children went into grade 9 and they went into what's called applied program of study and then took college courses, they would go to college. But what we learned is that a small percent, I think the last study that I read was it's only 25% of those children actually go to college. So we're calling it college stream, but they don't go there.
Yeah, interesting.
What we've learned is that young people who aren't taking the highest level of programming, academic, they don't go anywhere. They might graduate, but they don't necessarily access post-secondary education. So we have to be really thoughtful. Like if we know based on data, and there was a study by Gillian Perrick and some others, and it was based on data from Toronto District School Board because they disaggregate their data, that if you didn't have a U-level math or English, that your access to college was so limited. So if I know as a parent, my child doesn't have a grade 11 and 12 course at a U level, that their access to post-secondary education is largely diminished, which it is, that I want to make sure they have it.
Mm.
And I think when we label the college program of study, most parents would assume, okay, you can go to college.
Right, yeah.
When in reality, most of the children do not.
Yeah, okay.
So in Waterloo, the reason why we said we have to maintain academic in grade 10 is we knew that would give more students an opportunity to take U-level courses in grade 11.
Okay, I see.
And we did get an increase in math of 400 students, an increase in English of 390 students who now had access to a U-level course.
Yeah.
And what if you read the research on streaming, they're gatekeepers. If you don't have this, then the gate's closed. You don't get to go there.
Right. Okay.
And so when we think about streaming and the reason it is such an important topic, it's because we know it prevents young people from getting to all potential opportunities.
Yeah.
So I'm glad the province said, okay, let's not do it in grade 9. And we were the only province in the country doing it from grade 8 to 9. That's great.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been a commitment about grade 10. Or we haven't discussed the impact beyond that.
Right.
And I think we have to think a little bit differently about it.
Because it might look different depending on their grades too, to your point. Yeah. Wow. That's really positive. I mean, I'm glad that I'm learning more about this, which is super, super important for me. When you think about, the school boards that maybe have struggled a little bit to implement these type of programs, given your success at the school board success at Waterloo, what recommendation or what advice would you have for them if someone's listening and they've been thinking about this or they've done this at their board and it's struggled or it hasn't worked as well? What advice would you give them? What worked for Waterloo that made it more successful?
And I think it's also important to say that I started this work in Toronto and they have a wonderful destream program there. There was always champions of the work there. And there's many champions of the work for Waterloo. And I think there's 3 things to think about. One is, what is our belief about streams? Do we think it's a problem? So I think as soon as people recognize how problematic streams are, it's hard to stop people from doing it. So they say you can kill a revolutionary, but not a revolution. And when we first started the work and that was Fred Hampton who said that. When we first started the work in Toronto, we did it as an inquiry. We said, okay, let's look at this streaming thing.
Yeah.
And the schools that we engaged with, and they were in the Jane and Finch area.
Yeah.
So we said, let's go to the schools where the most kids are streamed, which was in Jane and Finch, because we know that streaming is overrepresented by particular populations. Once they realized that it wasn't good for kids and that we were making a decision about their ability.
Yeah.
Like they can't do this thing in grade 9. It's too hard for them, which isn't okay.
Yeah.
Once they realized that's what we were doing and that they could achieve at the academic level, I don't think we could have stopped the teachers because they now believed that
they
was
bought
wrong.
in. Yeah.
So I think part of the conversation for boards who are thinking about it is, what is your belief? In Waterloo, we have what we call the North Star, that identity and social location should not dictate outcomes. And we know that the streams, they disproportionately marginalize particular populations based on race, class lines, and on ability. So a lot of young people who have a special education designation, we think, oh, they can't handle that, which of course is not true, because they do have the cognitive ability. We might have to teach them differently. Yeah. And so we put them, you take this applied because it's easier. And it's not okay that we
assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my oldest son went to St. Mike's, which is a private school.
Yeah.
And I remember when he was in grade 9 or 10, and I said, I was curious because I was doing all this work about academic and applied, and I said, like, how many kids are in applied? And he was like, oh, we don't have that here. I was like, what do you mean? And this isn't at a time when it was banned anywhere else.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? He said, we have academic and advanced placement. And I said, well, what about the students who are struggling? And he was like, well, they get tutors.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what? So in this private school where there's lots of money and lots of advantage, they didn't even have it at that time.
Right.
So what would happen if we had this belief that, okay, if you're struggling in academic, we're going to get you extra help. We're going to do it a little differently. And the other belief that I would encourage boards to think about, which I'm sure they already do, is that the thing that moves young people's ability to learn the most is the instruction of the teacher. So we have to think about, what do we actually believe about kids? What is the instruction that teachers are using? And how do we support? How do we support that? I was really blessed that when I went to Waterloo, their destreaming initiative was rolling.
Yeah.
And I got to jump in and continue the momentum.
Yeah.
And they had already bought into the belief part of it. They knew it wasn't good for kids. And when we had that going, now it's like, okay, where are we going to put additional supports? Because kids do arrive to secondary school with a gap. Because streaming doesn't start at grade 9.
Yeah. I really like that. No, that's really, really nice. I feel like it's also one of those things where, to your point, once you get champions and once you get momentum, it becomes a lot easier for you to get from point A to point B.
For sure.
If people aren't bought into it, if people don't believe in it, then you're gonna struggle in either way. It doesn't matter where you are.
Absolutely.
I really like that. Are there any other things that you're particularly excited about when you look towards the new school year and beyond that? Are there any things in addition to this that you're really particularly excited about?
I'm really excited about school improvement. And I know that sounds a little odd. And I joke with my superintendents that I'm going to put it on my license plate.
Yeah.
But let me tell you why. I mean, nothing ever happens in a silo.
Yeah.
And I was really, really blessed that in the Toronto District School Board, I worked as a central principal for school improvement and equity for maybe it was 5 years.
Yeah.
And I thought about, read about, taught about school improvement with some brilliant people in the board, like Kim Pivotor, Aaron Altazar, Sherilyn Scobie, Jane Phillips-Long. And this is what we lived and breathed. And I had this wonderful group of coaches who I worked with because I worked with about 144 schools as a central principal. And we believed what bell hooks often pushes, which is schools should be a site of liberation. So how can we use this process, school improvement? There's a process. Every school has to use it to create liberation. So that was what we used to grapple with. So this year in Waterloo, and lots of credit to the superintendents in Waterloo, we played with a model of school improvement that if we asked the right questions, if we co-did the work with schools, would we get those students who have been struggling historically for 20 years in our data, the same kids, how could we change that narrative? So what I'm excited about is we actually are launching a school improvement process in Waterloo this year.
Yeah.
It's all computerized.
Okay.
So I can press a button and see what's happening in the schools. We're all asking similar questions.
Yeah.
So that we can get at the heart of who's struggling most in the school and what do we need to do differently as an adult to change that narrative. What do we need to do with the environment? So this type of process, it's cyclical. It takes about 6 visits of superintendents with the principals in their schools that will happen over the course of the year. So our hope is we go in, we look at the data, we create the type of goals we think will move the needle for the students who are historically underserved.
Yeah.
And if whatever we input there will help everybody, of course. And can we create a system where all children with the cognitive ability, which is the vast majority of children, achieve at the provincial standard at a minimum? So I'm really excited to watch this, to think about how are we working with so many brilliant administrators in Waterloo to move schools. And I think because there's so many pressures in schools, so many moving pieces, that us as superintendents going into the schools, doing the work with the principals, which of course they were already doing, but we're trying to do it in a very cohesive, systemic way.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, I have a couple of things I would love to unwrap there. What type of questions do you ask? What makes good questions?
So one of the things that we're asking is who is struggling the most?
Okay.
In your school?
Okay.
Is there a pattern of who's struggling? Is it a lot of boys in reading? I don't know. Who's struggling? Like, Who are the faces?
And
Who
so
are the
who
kids?
answers these? The principal, the teachers?
The superintendent does this with the principal.
Okay.
And of course, the principal will have worked with the teachers, and
Yeah.
there's data that we collect. So they ask these questions, and then the question becomes, okay, what is it that we need to change in our instructional practice that allows young people to be more successful? So a lot of the research I did around school improvement dates back to somebody by the name of Dr. Ronald Edmonds.
Okay.
And this is back in the 70s, where he was trying to challenge a common belief. And it's almost laughable now because we wouldn't believe it anymore.
Yeah.
But then they just assumed that, if you come from poverty, that you're just not as smart.
Yeah.
Like that was an actual paper that everyone read and everyone believed. And so he was like, no, I don't believe it. So the whole school effectiveness journey, I call him the father of school effectiveness. It was really to say, it was a challenge to the status quo to say, no, kids can achieve if we create the right environment and offer the right instruction.
Right.
So the questions are, who's not achieving? What do we as the adult and system need to do differently so that they are achieving at the provincial standard? One of the goals in Waterloo is that all students will be reading at the provincial standard by the end of grade 2. And sometimes you'll hear in different districts across the province, it's a lofty goal, but I don't think it's lofty. I think it's...
What if the principals don't know what you need to do? They just know the challenges. Like, because I would assume that if they knew what to do, they maybe would have done part of it. Like, does it happen where it's like, we see this type of students struggle a lot. They tend to be boys in reading in grade 4. I'm making it up, right?
Yes.
But I don't know what to do. Like, I maybe they're like, they've tried some things and it hasn't worked. So is the school improvement also a bit of investigative work and a bit of like piloting or a bit of trial and error? Or,
I love that question.
Or do you think they know and they
No,
just don't?
I think it's piloting. It's inquiry based. Ask a question and let's learn, think, and find out the answer.
Figure it out together.
We got to figure it out together. Superintendent is there as a co-thinker.
Yeah.
Not so much in a I'm your boss role, but let's think about this together so we can come up with an answer. Because all students should be able to read. It's a right.
Absolutely it is. Oh, I like that. And so how many schools can you do and like how long does this take? Like,
So,
is this like am I imagining a semester? Am I imagining a week?
Well, we have staged it out. So we should be finished a full cycle by April-ish.
Okay. And that is all the schools within the board or a cycle of like one school going through the process?
Every single school will go through this at least once.
Wow.
I'm sure many schools might go through it twice because they've been doing this work. But we're making it more cohesive across the system.
Yeah.
So that everyone is getting some similar questions. And then based on your school context, there might be other questions or other things. Because there's so many different push factors in a school.
Exactly, yeah. Even like the physical location of a school can play a role. The geographic region of a school can play a role. There's so much more beyond just like what's happening in the school.
Absolutely.
So many more push and pull factors to your point.
Absolutely.
I really like that. That's really insightful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I'm going to shift gears here into our rapid fire round. So I'll throw you a question, and if you can give me a response in under a minute, that'll be perfect.
I'm ready.
Okay, ready. Okay. What is the single biggest misconception about students with learning disabilities that you wish you could correct?
That these young people have a ceiling. I think there's a lot of bias applied when you hear learning disability.
Yeah.
When really there's no reason that those with a learning disability should not achieve the provincial standard. There's no reason.
Yeah, I like that. What is one belief about education or leadership that you've changed your mind on recently?
I used to think that education was the great equalizer. And I think now I understand it's part of the equation, that all of our public sectors are really part of the solution. Unemployment, public health, housing, it's all part of a narrative that works together to create the best possible society for young people.
I love that. That's really nice. What is one thing you would be most proud to be remembered for?
This is a tough question because I don't feel I need to be remembered. I think what would bring me the most joy is if the work that I think matters most continues after I'm long gone that we didn't need an advocate for destreaming because it was just the norm.
Yeah.
We didn't need to apply anti-oppressive questions to school improvement because that's just how we thought.
Yeah.
If, the people that I am blessed to mentor right now in terms of their leadership, if they in turn will now mentor somebody else. So I think I would just love to leave education better than I found it.
I like that. It's really good. What is something most people don't know about you?
This is a hard question. Well, I hope, somewhere in the future, I can be a yoga instructor.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I would love to get a little bit more into wellness. I do think it's a space in education that's really hard for us to grapple with because we believe wellness, but when we really think about wellness, I think there's a lot of changes that we'd really have to make to make it a space that really embodies wellness.
You already got the teacher in you.
Right?
It's just getting the yoga and the wellness space.
But there it is.
I love that. Wow. How has being a mother of four influenced your perspective as a leader?
Oh, it really is everything. I think it taught me that parents are the first teacher. So as an educator, I have such a great respect for parents, what they've taught their children already, and how we can build on that. I think it's really taught me about relationships.
Yeah.
I kind of, my husband and I laughed because we're both educators. And when we went to all of the interviews for our kids, our first question was, well, is he happy?
Yeah.
Does he like to be here? Does he have friends? Like, we weren't concerned about academics.
But it was about the emotional, the social.
Yeah. And we learned really quickly that teachers, educators, SNAs, whatever educator you encounter in the building, every interaction they have with a young person impacts them. Their belief about themselves and their belief about the world. So that relationship has really impacted me. It also, as a mother, I also had to learn how to balance and how to juggle and how to navigate, because so often we're in a space of grind culture, just grind it out and work till, midnight. And it's also honored in many ways. Like, you're better if you do that. And I think I had to make a very specific effort to say, no, that isn't the right way. I was blessed to have my first principal, Craig Howe. He respected that. And I always said to my staff, family first. It's always family first. And it's just become part of who I am as an educator.
I like that. It's so important. It's so important to make sure you have your priorities right.
Absolutely.
Those are the moments that matter most in life.
Yeah, and it's interesting, at our leadership event last week, the director, Scott Miller, that he led with that, what matters most, and he put up a picture of his family.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really a powerful moment because it told the whole system that what matters most is your family.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Very well said. What is a student moment that made you smile recently?
Ooh, a student moment. Something that made me smile recently. I went into a school and this group of kids, they just ran up and hugged me. And I didn't know them and they didn't know me. They thought I was their boss's boss because that's how they introduced me, and which was weird to them because they saw the principal as the boss. And the superintendent as that person's boss. You're like, there's another boss?
There's another one?
But I think because I was kind of casual. I was wearing my Tims, and I think I just looked like them. And they just hugged me. And it was such a reminder of the humanity of young people.
Yeah.
And the ability to care and to love. And it made me smile.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. All right, Alison, we have a tradition here for our final question. We have previous guests leave questions for our future guests. So I'll pull out a question here for you, and then I'll give you an opportunity to leave a question for one of our future guests as well. So let's see what we've got today. And I'll let you know who it is from. And maybe I'll try and ask you a question from someone you may know. Just as a way for you to, maybe you can message them and tell them how hard or easy their question was.
I will.
Let's see. I'm trying to find a hard one for you intentionally because you're very good with your answers. So I'll get the hardest question.
It's going to be a stumper. I can feel it.
Well, at least you don't take it up with me, right? You take it up
I
with,
will. That's
with
right.
whoever gives you this question. I'm looking for a very specific question. Okay, perfect. So maybe I'll ask you two, because I've got two great ones here. This first one is from Rashmi, our Director of Education at Peel District School Board. She asked, if you had one place in the world you could travel to, where would you go and why?
I think I would go to India.
Oh, yeah?
I have
family there.
Oh, see, I
Yeah.
might need to. I might need to call them up.
Yeah.
My family is from St. Vincent, which is in the Caribbean,
Oh.
but I have ancestry in India,
Really? Oh,
and
wow.
I don't know it, and I
Yeah.
want to explore it.
Where in
So-
India would you go? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Give you
know yet.
recommendations.
Yes, I might need to hit you.
India
with
is a
some.
beautiful place. It's
I've
such a
heard
unique
that.
culture.
Yeah,
A lot of good food.
I
But
know.
the Caribbean has great food too.
Oh,
to
but
be
I've
fair.
been there. You see.
Yeah. India will be a very nice,
Yeah.
cultural. You'd love it.
Yeah,
It's
I
a lot
would
of
like
fun.
to go.
And it's buzzing. It's always buzzing.
Okay, I love it.
I love that. One more question I'll ask you.
Okay, I'm ready.
From John DeFaveri.
Okay.
He's a Director of Education at York Catholic District School
Okay.
Board. John's question is, if you could change one thing about this role, what would it be?
I love the role, but I think one thing I would change, I think there's a lot of meetings
Oh.
at this level, and they don't always impact the student's desk. So if I could change one thing, it would be to streamline both meetings and emails
Yeah.
so that I could put my full attention at the student's desk.
Yeah. Or every meeting invite should have a thing where it says, how does this impact the student's desk?
Oh, I like
and
that.
someone has to justify
I like
how
it.
that meeting, people have done very interesting things. I don't know if you know Stephen Bartlett. He
Know that
runs
name.
another podcast and he's in the UK too.
Okay.
He's an entrepreneur, sort of really popular with his podcast too. And so he made a recent post because he turned 33. So he was just sharing about some advice to folks. And he talks about how he thinks about his time and how we as humans, we burn maybe 70% of our time in pointless meetings. Pointless in the sense that it could be so many different things. So he says 30-minute meeting, 5 minutes someone's late, it's a small talk. And then you have a meeting for 10 minutes. And then you because you have 20 minutes left, you're discussing something not related to the meeting, takes up time. So he has this funny rule where he says, if it's something that can be discussed in under 7 minutes, it could be a voice note. If it's something that could be that's just like a FYI, like I'm just telling you something, I just want you to know something, always an email, never a meeting. And if it needs to be a little bit more personal, or a personal conversation, like a one-on-one, it's a phone call. And it's a phone call maybe on a walk or something like that. And he just talked about how he just defined some of those rules, and he's been able to, he spends only about 20% of his day in meetings, which used to be 80%, but he gets more done, right? He's able to, his mind, his brain capacity frees up for things that are more important, the creative thinking, the things that actually matter for long-term success, and not on the small things where you're just back to back all day in meetings. So I found that very interesting. I mean, definitely a very entrepreneurial approach towards thinking, but I sort of resonate with that too. I'm like, how many meetings do we really need to have?
Yeah.
Could this be a voice note?
Yeah.
And he says the amount of stuff that gets done over WhatsApp is, you'd be surprised. Like how
I
many
believe it.
decisions, how much we just talk over voice notes. Because when people do a voice note, they can't talk for more than a minute. Because it's weird. Like, how much of a voice note are you going to send? So that means whatever you have to say is going to be said in under a minute.
True.
So
I think I am going to put, how does this affect the student desk? I'm getting agendas now. Yes,
it'll be fun. All right, Alison, I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave our question for our next guest. So you can write it down over there.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right. Wonderful.
There you go.
Thank you. Hopefully the next guest enjoys that question.
Yes.
Hopefully it's not too difficult.
I don't think so. Hopefully you can read it.
Yeah. You should see the others.
Oh, yeah.
It's always fun. But Alison, this has been really great. I mean, thank you so much for your space, for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your experiences. It means a lot to me. And I'm sure that a lot of people found value. I think we got to talk about some really meaningful things, some really cool things you're working on. And I really respect your approach and your mentality towards our future generation and how do we do the right thing for them. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.